Have you noticed that some elderly, days before you died, begin to present behaviors and changes in the body that no one can explain? The skin changes color, breathing transforms, the look gets different, but most people simply ignore these signs. This happens in the body of the elderly days before death, and no one notices. Have you ever seen this happen to someone in your family, but just understood what it was after it was too late? This is a truth that few people have the courage to speak. The body of an elderly man begins to give silent signs that life is coming to an end, and most people have no idea what is happening. Sudden physical changes, strange behavior, deep silence, lost look, all this can be part of a natural but devastating process that precedes death. Worse, many think it's just age or weakness or normal, but it is not. If you have a father, a mother, a grandfather, a grandmother, or any elderly family member, this video may be the most important you will watch today. And I am not exaggerating. Knowing how to recognize these signs can prepare you for an extremely delicate moment, avoid hasty decisions, and especially allow you to offer more comfort and dignity in the last days of those you love. Most people believe that death comes suddenly, as if it were a blackout, but this is a myth. Science, health professionals, and palliative care experts already know. The elderly body begins to prepare for the end days earlier, sometimes until weeks earlier. They are visible signs, noticeable but ignored. Do you know that sudden loss of appetite? Or when the elderly stop drinking water? That irregular breath which seems to come in waves? Or does the fact that he spends hours silent, looking at nothing? All of this has an explanation, and you will find out now. Many family members regret not having perceived these signs before. Comments like, "I thought he was just tired," or "I thought it was just a flu," are common. But if you knew what was really happening in that person's body, perhaps your attitude had been different. Maybe you had hugged more, "Be careful," said things that were choked for years. Perhaps you had avoided painful decisions, or even managed to seek medical help in time to relieve suffering. Not knowing it hurts. Knowing can change everything. And why almost no one talks about it? Simple. Because we are afraid of death. We avoided this theme as if talking about it would call it close. But ignoring the signs that precede the death of an elderly will not prevent it from happening. It will just leave you unprepared. And the price of this, emotionally, is very high. So, stay with me until the end of this video. I will show you, one by one, the main physical, emotional, and behavioral signs that appear days before the death of an elderly. And I will simply explain what each of these signs means in the body and brain in this final phase of life. Perhaps you find out that something you saw happens to your father, mother, or grandfather, and that to this day causes you doubt or guilt, was actually the body just fulfilling your cycle. Because in the end, the body speaks. He warns. He asks for help. And when we learn to listen, everything changes. And when we learn to listen, everything changes. Understanding these signs is not just an act of knowledge. It is a gesture of love, respect, deep care. So before we continue, I want to ask you something very important. Comment down here if you've been through a similar situation. If you had someone close to you who had strange behaviors days before you died, or even if you never knew it, but want to prepare to deal with this delicate moment better. Your comment can help other people identify themselves, reflect, and even share stories that bring comfort to those who are going through something similar. This space here is more than a video. It is an emotional support point and real exchange of experiences. And if this content is making sense to you so far, leave your like right now. This shows to YouTube that this theme is important and makes the video reach more people who also need this information. There are a lot of people living this dilemma in silence, not knowing what is happening to their parents, their grandparents, and you can be the channel of light for them simply by enjoying this video. Subscribe to the channel and activates the bell, because here we will talk without fear and empathy about everything that involves aging, the health of the elderly, the palliative care, the dignity in the final phase of life, and especially how to give the best for those who gave us everything. Now it takes a deep breath, because what comes next is the most impactful signs than the man's body manifest. It's days before death, and that most people unfortunately only realize when it's too late. Now breathe deep, because what comes next is the most impactful signs that the elderly body manifests days before death, and that most people unfortunately only realize when it's too late. And the first sign is one of the most subtle, but also one of the most symbolic: the sudden fall of appetite. When the body begins to prepare for the shutdown, he understands that he no longer needs so much energy. Digestion, which requires physical and metabolic effort, is no longer a priority. The elderly simply stop eating. That food he liked so much no longer tastes. The smell of coffee, warm bread, rice with family beans, nothing more arouses interest. Many family members interpret this as stubbornness or tantrum and try to force food, but it is actually the body saying, "I am ending my cycle." And this process doesn't stop there. The same goes for fluid intake. The water is refused, the mouth is dry, the lips crack, and this leads us to a second sign: the drastic reduction in urine production and evacuation. An elderly man who usually went to the bathroom 2-3 times a day suddenly spends hours until days without urinating or evacuating. This is because the kidneys and intestines start working at an extremely slow or almost null rhythm. The body no longer sees it to eliminate what is not being consumed. It is as if each organ slowly begins to turn off its functions. It is a slow camera shutdown and silent. But silence is also broken by something that many family members notice and do not understand: the change in breathing. The elderly breathing becomes irregular, sometimes with long breaks, as if he was forgetting to breathe. At other times, the pace accelerates for a few seconds, then slows down again. It is a strange and disconcerting cycle called Cheney-Stokes breathing. This pattern is one of the most striking signs of the pre-death process, but is rarely recognized by those next door. Many times when someone comments, "He's breathing strange," it's already a clear warning that the body is entering the last phases of the shutdown. It is important to observe, welcome, and above all, understand that this process is natural, albeit painful to witness. Another evident but often underestimated physical sign is the change in the ends of the body. Hands, feet, fingers, ears, they start to get cold, frozen to touch, sometimes even purplish. This phenomenon happens because the body is redirecting blood flow to vital organs such as heart and brain, no longer irrigating peripheral regions. This is what we call peripheral cyanosis, and is one of the clearest visual signs of the shutdown process. The touch of the caregiver or family member perceives this coldness, but often interprets as a problem of common circulation or blames the cold environment, when in fact it is the body saying, "I'm no longer investing energy in these parts." Moreover, another common and deeply touching behavior is extreme weakness and constant drowsiness. The elderly sleeps more than wakes up, and when he wakes up, he is without strength, without reaction, with the dragged speech, his eyes heavy, can't hold objects, get out of bed, or even keep her eyes open for a long time. This weakness is not just muscle, it is as if the soul itself is preparing to rest. Many family members confuse this behavior with depression or side effects of medicines. But if the other physical signs are also present, this state of deep drowsiness can be one of the body's last warnings that the time is coming. And there's still something very strong we need to talk about. In some cases, the elderly begin to speak disconnected sentences as if they are saying goodbye, or mention the names of deceased people. They say phrases like, "My mother is calling me," or "I'm going to travel, I'm going home." These phrases, however disturbing as they seem, are part of a phenomenon that many professionals call transition experiences. These are signs that mind and spirit are also entering another state of consciousness, slowly disconnecting from reality. And here, once again, it is important not to judge, not correct, not try to bring it back to the present. But yes, welcome, listen, and be present. Do you realize how all this connects? The body gives signs, many signs. But when these symptoms appear in isolation, they are usually seen as normal. But the problem is just when they happen at the same time. When an old man stops eating, stops urinating, breathes differently, has cold hands, sleeps all day, and begins to disconnect emotionally. This is no coincidence. It is the body ending its vital functions in a delicate, progressive way, and many sometimes invisible to those around. And that's why understanding these signs can make all the difference in the way you deal with this phase of life. Knowing that it is not laziness, freshness, tantrum, but a natural and inevitable process. It changes everything. It changes your gaze, changes your reaction, changes your way of saying goodbye. Because when you understand what is happening, you suffer less from guilt, with the doubt, the feeling of, I could have done more. And this, for those who stay, is a huge relief. So tell me, have you ever seen any of these signs happen to someone close? Have you noticed these changes in your father, your mother, your grandfather or grandmother, and not knowing what it meant? Comment here below. Write only one sentence if you want. It could be something like, "My father went through this and I didn't know," or, "Now I understand what happened to my grandmother." This will help not only you to put it out, but also other people who can identify themselves and feel welcomed. Let's create a current of information and empathy here in the comments. Have you heard someone say that you saw the father calling for the mother who has passed away? Or to tell you that grandfather spoke to someone who died years ago, as if that person was there in the room right next to him? These reports, however strange they may seem, are much more frequent than you might think. And behind them, there is a deep and sensitive truth. When the elderly body begins to prepare for death, it is not only the physical that changes. The mind, emotions, the way it perceives the world around it also transforms. Silently, often subtle, but extremely significant. These emotional and psychological changes are part of the same process of dismissal we have already talked about. And for those who closely follow, these are moments that deeply move with their hearts. Because seeing someone you love to stop being who has always been, gradually it's not easy. The elderly begins to demonstrate an emotional apathy that did not exist before. That person who laughed with little, who was interested in everything, who liked to talk, to ask questions, to give, suddenly silences. The brightness in the look seems to disappear. The reactions become slow, almost absent. It is as if he was physically there, but emotionally elsewhere. This emotional apathy is not depression in the clinical sense of the word, although it looks a lot. It is a sign that the connection with the material world is loosening. He begins to care less about what happens around, with the news, the family problems, the objects he always liked to have around. The television he watched every day is no longer important. Visits, however dear, no longer arouse the same enthusiasm. Speech decreases. Sentences become shorter, sometimes even incoherent. And this sudden silence is often interpreted as boredom or tiredness, but it is much deeper than that. This type of disconnection with the surrounding environment is one of the most important and most difficult signs to perceive and accept. The elderly seems to be looking at nothing, and when you ask what he is thinking, he responds with a simple "nothing" or just "I'm quiet." But inside, it may be experiencing a moment of internal reconciliation, silent farewell, preparation for something that deep down he already feels that he is coming. In many cases, he cannot put in words what he is feeling, and the truth is that it doesn't even need it. The body and mind are already communicating otherwise. Another phenomenon that deserves a lot of attention and sensitivity are the reports of visions and delusions involving loved ones that have already died. Many elderly, days or even hours before death, begin to report that they saw people from the family who have already left. And it's not just a memory or a memory. They speak as if they are really seeing these people there, present, talking to them. The mother came here today, some say. Uncle Fulano passed earlier, others say. Some say that these views are mere delusions, hallucinations caused by lack of oxygen in the brain or medicines. But there are also those who believe they are spiritual manifestations, real encounters with who is already on the other side. Regardless of one's belief, the fact is that these experiences are real to those who are living. And the most important thing is not to discuss whether they are true or not, but to welcome the elderly with respect and empathy. Correct. Denying or mocking only causes more disconnect. The ideal is to listen carefully, ask questions calmly, allow him to share what he is feeling, even if it seems strange. In many cases, these reports bring comfort to the elderly itself. He feels that he is being welcomed in some way, and that may be exactly what he needs at that moment, to feel that he is not alone in this transition. There is still another layer of these changes that few people do, the way the elderly start to deal with time. He stops talking about the future, the plans, the desires, the dreams. All this is disappearing from the conversation. He starts to live in the present or in the past, revives old memories more often, remember things that no one else remembered, as if plunged into an internal photo album, sometimes even confuses times, treats grandchildren as if they were their own children in childhood, mixes names, relives youth scenes with impressive details. And this return to origins can also be a sign that the cycle is closing. The way the elderly reacts emotionally to small things too changes. A gesture of affection can cause sudden tears. A touch to the hands, an old song, a word of affection. Everything can trigger an intense answer. At the same time, situations that previously irritated or worried him stop causing any reaction. It is as if he was moving emotionally from worldly conflicts. And in fact it is. The mind is busy with another mission now, to detach. Of course, this process is not the same for everyone. Each person is unique. But when these emotional and psychological signs appear combined with the physical signs we speak before, such as loss of appetite, irregular breathing, extreme weakness, the picture begins to draw more clearly. And that's where family, friends, caregivers need to be aware, not to solve anything, but to offer presence, comfort, respect, and welcome. And when we start seeing these signs with this more human and conscious look, a lot changes inside us as well. We began to value the moments of silence more, to understand that sometimes the best way to take care is simply being there, holding hands, without saying anything. Because at this stage, the elderly do not need great speeches or magic solutions. What he most needs is someone who understands what is happening, even without words. Now tell me, have you ever witnessed any of these emotional changes in someone in your family? Have you heard your father, mother, or grandfather talk to someone who has already died? Have you noticed that silence that seemed to hide a farewell? Comment down here what you have ever lived or observed. You can simply write, "I saw my grandfather calling my grandmother," or "Now I understand why my mother was so quiet." This will help a lot of people who are going through something similar. Everything has heard so far, physical changes, loss of appetite, changed breathing, silence, visions, emotional disconnection, are not random events or without explanation. They are part of a process very well understood by medicine, although few people talk about it clearly and accessible. The truth is that when the end of life approaches, the body goes into multi-system collapse, and that means that several systems of the body begin to fail simultaneously, as if they were turning slowly in a natural order, almost like a silent ritual of the body that understands that their mission is coming to an end. It is as if the body said, "I don't need to spend energy on it anymore." And then it begins to slow down metabolism, reducing functions that were once automatic. The digestive system is one of the first to reduce the rhythm. That's why the elderly stop feeling hungry, rejects liquids, loses weight quickly. The intestine does not work as before. The liver processes everything slower. The kidneys filter less. Each part of the body decreases its activity. But the most delicate and at the same time more impactful is when this process reaches the brain. The human brain at this final stage begins to turn its functions slowly and progressively. It no longer prioritizes complex cognitive tasks. The awareness of time and space is lost. The notion of reality begins to be confused with memories. The brain preserves the essentials, such as breathing control, heartbeat, primary reflexes, but no longer gives importance to what is not vital. This is why the elderly begins to confuse people, speaks with deceased behelves, mixes the gift with the past. It's not crazy. It is not mental illness. It is a brain that is doing what has been programmed to do, prepare for death gradually. And as much as all this may seem sad, modern medicine, especially through the area of palliative care, shows us that this process can be lived with dignity, respect, and even peace. Palliative care is precisely the part of medicine that focuses on relieving physical, emotional, and spiritual suffering at the end of life. They do not try to avoid death at any cost, but seek to understand the signs of the patient's body and mind, offering the necessary support for this moment to occur as smoothly as possible. This includes pain control, thermal comfort, emotional tranquility, and support to family members. Palliative care experts explain that all these signs the body gives are expected, natural, and part of a process that only becomes painful when the family is not prepared to understand. When the elderly begins to shut up, not to eat, see people who are gone, medicine does not say we will bring back lucidity at any cost. On the contrary, the focus is, how can we make this moment as uncomfortable as possible to him and who is with him? This is where the role of attentive observation comes in. Often what an attentive doctor perceives in minutes, an entire family ignores for days, not out of carelessness, but for lack of knowledge. And this is the biggest barrier we face today. People are afraid to look at death. When we understand that the body is not failing but performing a natural process of shutdown, everything changes. The heart beats slower, not for weakness, but because he no longer has to work so hard. Breathing changes not by panic but because the brain is at another frequency. The extremities cool, not because the blood has disappeared, but because it is being redirected to the essentials. Medicine explains all this clearly, but this information rarely comes to the population accessible. And so, many families despair, trying to force food, trying to keep the elderly awake, trying to bring back someone who is already in another plane of consciousness. There are technical terms for each of these phases: multisystem collapse, cerebral hypoxia, renal failure, metabolic acidosis. But what matters here is not medical jargon. What matters is what this represents. It represents that the body is preparing, wisely and with order, to leave this world. There is no despair in the body. Despair is in those who do not know what is happening. And that is why talking about this is so necessary. Because when we understand, we welcome. And when we welcome, the moment of departure, however painful, becomes a moment of love, delivery, and presence. Within palliative care, there is even the concept of good death or dignified death. This does not mean that the person will die without any suffering, although with the right care this is possible, but that they will be entitled to live the last days or hours with as much comfort as possible, with autonomy, respect, and especially surrounded by people who understand it. And this understanding is born of knowledge. Knowing what medicine explains about this process is the key to turning a moment of pain into a moment of deep connection. Many families report that they only truly understood what the end of life was after going through this with someone who once thought the person was simply getting worse, not knowing that every detail, the look standing, the breath fails, the lack of thirst, were signs that the body was saying goodbye. When these signs are ignored, suffering increases. When they are respected, the process becomes more human. And this knowledge is not just a doctor. He is emotional. He is spiritual. He is human. This is why so many medical teams today work by integrating doctors, nurses, psychologists, therapists, and even religious leaders to support not only the patient, but the whole family. Because the end of life is not a technical event, it is a sacred event. And knowing how to identify the signs of the body is the first step in living this moment with more serenity. This does not mean giving up who is leaving. It means recognizing that it is no longer the time to fight the inevitable, but to honor every second that still has a true presence, with listening, welcoming, and, above all, with love. Now tell me here in the comments, have you been through this process with someone in your family and only then realized what was going on? Have you ever had that feeling that doctors knew something you didn't understand yet? Write down here. It can just be a sentence like, "Now I understand what I saw with my grandfather," or "I wanted to have known it before." These words are not only yours, they play other people either. Share it. If you have stayed with me here, you understand that the elderly body does not simply stop working overnight. He warns, he shows, he gives signs. The question now is, what to do with all this? How to act in the face of these signs? How to welcome, how to respect, how to provide comfort without trying to force the body to continue a journey that is naturally coming to an end. This is perhaps the most sensitive and most humane part of all this conversation, because dealing with this moment requires more than knowledge, requires heart, requires empathy, requires true presence. And the first step, perhaps the most essential, is to understand that you are not there to save, but to accompany with dignity. Many people realizing that their father, mother, or grandfather is eating less, talking little, breathing strangely, panicking. The immediate answer is to go after solutions. Vitamins, supplements, hospitalization, exams, procedures, all with the sincere intention of helping, of recovering. But what most people don't understand until living it is that this is no longer a time to try to heal, but to welcome. The focus now is no longer extending life at any cost, but ensuring that the last days, hours, or minutes of this life are lived with respect, comfort, and peace. And it starts with simple but extremely powerful attitudes. The first of these is the presence, being by the side, even in silence. Hold the elderly hand, gently caress the skin, Speak words of affection in the ear, even if it seems not to respond. Often, hearing is the last sense that goes. That is, even when the eyes are closed, even when it seems that he is unconscious, he may be listening. And listening to the voice of those who love at that moment is like a hug in the soul. Do not underestimate the power of a sentence like, "We are here with you. You are safe. You can rest. We will be fine." These words are not just comfort. They are bridge between worlds. Another important point is the physical touch. The elderly body may be cold, fragile, sensitive, but the touch still has the power to calm, to convey affection. A warm blanket, a more comfortable pillow, a soft massage on your feet, a damp cloth riding your face delicately. Each gesture of these is a way of saying, "You matter," until the last second. This has a deep emotional impact, not only for those who are leaving but also for those who stay. Because when we take care of love, even the farewell transforms. But for this to happen, it is also necessary to prepare the environment. The light of the room doesn't have to be strong. The noise can be reduced. Calm songs, nature sounds, or even a song he liked can bring comfort. Soft perfumes, presence of dear objects, photographs of happy moments. All of this contributes to creating a space of serenity. Because yes, the environment greatly influences the way this moment is lived. A welcoming, quiet, respectful place allows the transition to be less painful, more humane, more beautiful. And here comes a delicate but necessary point: the preparation of the family. Many family members come into denial when they realize that the end is close. They say, "It will improve. It's just a bad phase. It's psychological." Others move away from fear for pain, not knowing how to deal. But it is precisely at this time that everyone needs to unite, strengthen themselves, prepare emotionally for the farewell. This does not mean accepting passively. It means understanding the process, welcoming what is happening and asking yourself, how can I be present in the best way possible? Sometimes this involves forgiving, asking forgiveness, thanking, saying goodbye with sincere words. Do not wait for the last breath to say what needs to be said. And if there are children or adolescents in the family, it is important to involve them with sensitivity. Explain that grandpa or grandma is in a delicate moment, that his body is preparing to rest, that this is part of life. Use simple, true words without fear, because hiding, lying, or pushing only increases emotional confusion. The end of life is a learning for everyone, even for younger people, and living this moment in a family with clarity and affection can strengthen ties that will last forever. Many times, this is where the deepest conversations happen. That's when you hear things that have never been said before, when you share memories, stories, tears. And this is an essential part of the process. Do not run away from silence. Do not run away from tears. Do not escape the truth. All this is part of care. Because taking care of an elderly man who is in his last days is not just to manage medication or control vital signs. It is being present with soul. It is holding firmly the hand of those who have always held yours. It is to say with the look what the heart already knows. I am with you until the end. And one more very important thing. Each person has their time. Some depart fast, others take days. And during this time, you will feel high and downs. Sometimes you'll think he's getting better, sometimes he'll think it's the end. This is natural. The body has its rhythms, and the only thing that really matters is being there with love in each of these moments. There is no perfect way to live this farewell, but there is a lighter path when you understand what is happening and act with compassion. Maybe you are living this now. You may have gone through this and is reliving memories while watching this video. Or maybe you are preparing for what can happen to someone close MO. Whatever your moment, know that you are not alone, and that love is the most powerful force in these moments. It is He who gives meaning to every gesture, every tear, with every farewell. Now tell me here in the comments, have you been through this with someone in your family? How was this moment? Did you get present? Or did you get the feeling that you could have done more? Share. It can be a short sentence like, I was with my mother to the end, or I wanted to have understood it before with my father. This is not just outburst, it's connection, and it can help someone who is living it now. If you stayed with me here, from heart, thank you very much. Few people have the courage to face this theme to the end. And if you have reached this point of the video, it is because you care, you want to learn, and especially, you want to take better care of those who love. So already enjoy and subscribe here on the channel, because this is just the beginning of our journey. We will continue to talk about important, human, deep topics with the truth that almost no one has the courage to say. Now it helps me make this content come to more people. Leave your like, because so YouTube understands that this video has value and shows it to more people who need to hear it. And if you really came to the end, I want you to comment below, "I choose to take care of love to the end." Write this. This phrase will show me and to the whole community here that you stayed until the last second and that you are together with this mission of turning the way we deal with aging and the end of life. And oh, don't leave the video now. There is already another content appearing here on the screen. Just click to watch. It will complement everything you have learned today and prepare you even more to deal with this moment lightly, consciously, and with your heart alone. I hope you there. Let's continue together.